Hello there and welcome to Radio Algeria International. First, the top stories of the news. The President of the Republic, Mr. Ahmed Tebboune, has presided over the installation ceremony of the High Council for Import Regulation at the headquarters of the Presidency of the Republic. Algeria will celebrate tomorrow, Friday, the National Day of the People's National Army, established by the President of the Republic, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, Mr. Ahmed Tebboune, in recognition of the military institution's significant role in the country's construction process and the preservation of national unity and sovereignty. In the Western Sahara fight, Algeria and Tanzania have reaffirmed their support for the Sahrawi people's legitimate right to self-determination and for the efforts of the personal envoy of the United Nations Secretary-General for the revival of negotiations between the two parties to the conflict in order to reach a just and lasting political solution. These are the major developments, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. This is Mohammed Badazwan reporting. First, in our news file, the President of the Republic, Mr. Ahmed Tebboune, has presided over the installation ceremony of the High Council for Import Regulation at the headquarters of the Presidency of the Republic. Algeria will celebrate tomorrow, Friday, the National Day of the People's National Army, established by the President of the Republic, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, Abdelmajid Tebboune, in recognition for the country's or the military institution's significant role in the country's edification process and the preservation of national unity and sovereignty. On this occasion, the Algerian radio dedicated today programs to the National People's Army and its achievements, and to highlight the importance of being proud of the Algerian Army, which has made honorable achievements since the liberation of Algeria from the brutal French colonization in 1962. In addition to its constitutional missions, the major mission of the ANP Army has been to preserve the achievements required during the national liberation and to keep developing the training of its members. The ANP Army succeeded in the aftermath of independence to bear the burden of the socio-economic problems inherited from the French colonizer. The ANP was at the time the only organized power in the country. Thus, it contributed to the construction of the Algerian state through the achievement of major infrastructures. As a reminder, you may listen to a special broadcast dedicated to the ANP National Day at the end of our news edition. On the third day of his visit to Russia, the Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Army General Said Shangriha, visited the Zhugorovsky Air Base near the capital Moscow, accompanied by Dmitry Chugayev, Director of the Federal Service for Military and Technical Cooperation of the Russian Federation, where he was briefed on technological developments in the field of military aeronautics. A statement from the Ministry of National Defense said on Wednesday. Later, the Army General, Mr. Shangriha, visited the headquarters of the Dynamica, a company specialized in aeronautics technologies, to learn about the latest technologies and equipment in the field of basic pilot training, notably the aeronautical simulator programs, added the same source. Algeria and Tanzania have reaffirmed their support for the Sahrawi people's legitimate right to self-determination and for the efforts of the personal envoy of the United Nations Secretary-General for the revival of negotiations between the two parties to the conflict in order to reach a just and lasting political solution. In the joint communique crowning the proceedings of the fifth session of the Joint Commission for Cooperation between the two friendly countries, co-chaired in Algiers by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation of the United Republic of Tanzania, Mrs. Sgeromina Lawrence Tax, the two countries reaffirmed a joint position in favor of the legitimate and inalienable rights of the Sahrawi people to self-determination, Western Sahara being the last colony in Africa. Furthermore, Algeria and Tanzania have strongly condemned the recurrent aggressions committed by the Zionist occupation against Palestinian civilians, highlighting the importance of allowing Palestinians to have their right to an independent state with Al-Quds as capital. This came in the final communique of the first session of the joint cooperation between Algeria and Tanzania, co-chaired by Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf and his Tanzanian counterpart, Ségolène Lawrence Tax. The communique highlighted the necessity to deal with the Palestinian issue in the framework of international law and the UN resolutions that stipulate the right of the Palestinian people to an independent and sovereign state within the 1967 borders with Al-Quds as capital. The new headquarters of the Embassy of the United Republic of Tanzania in Algiers was officially inaugurated yesterday in the presence of the Tanzanian Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation, Ségolène Lawrence Tax, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf. In a speech on the occasion, Ségolène Tax pointed out that Tanzania has had an embassy in Algiers for many years and that its new headquarters was officially inaugurated today, underlining the depth of relations between the two friendly countries which have been established for 60 years. Concerning Niger, the heads of the West African bloc are still holding meetings in Abuja to discuss the attempted coup in Niger with the aim of finding a solution to the crisis in the country. Asabikar has more in this report.
The 15-member bloc of West African states issued a communique demanding that Niger's democratically elected president be returned to power within a week. Failing that, they would take necessary measures to restore constitutional order. The UN representative to Western Africa and the Sahel region, Leonardo Santos Simao, has said that the security situation in wider West Africa could worsen unless the political crisis in Niger is resolved, underlining the need for peace. Briefing journalists at UN headquarters in New York, Leonardo Santos Simao reiterated the condemnation of the attempted overthrow of Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum. He also underscored support for the efforts by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, aimed at restoring constitutional order and consolidating democratic gains in the country. The unfolding crisis, if not addressed, will exacerbate the deteriorating security situation in the region. It will also negatively impact the development and lives of the population in the country. He added that Niger and the region's populations deserve to enjoy peace, democratic governance, and prosperity. Meanwhile, Russia has called for dialogue to avoid the worsening of the situation in Niger, warning against military intervention in the country. U.S. President Joe Biden called for the immediate liberation of Niger's president and for the preservation of democracy in the country. Let's recall that Algeria reiterated its deep attachment to the return to constitutional order in Niger and its support to Mohamed Bazoum as the legitimate president, while warning against foreign military interventions.
In other news, the chairman of the National People's Assembly, APN, Brahim Boughali, has received the visiting Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation of the United Republic of Tanzania, Ségolène Lawrence Tax, according to an APN statement. The meeting provided an opportunity for the two sides to review the depth of the historic relations linking the two friendly countries. The Ministry of Health has announced that emergency measures have been taken to prevent the spread of diphtheria, which appeared in certain border regions with the countries of the Sahel, notably the management of all cases at the level of health structures, the creation of a crisis unit to monitor the epidemiological situation, and strengthen surveillance and implementation, an investigation of cases, according to a press release released from the ministry. The National People's Army ANP has reported a foiling at the port of Algiers of an attempt to smuggle a large quantity of cocaine into our country, amounting to more than 35 kilograms, concealed on board a commercial vessel flying a Maltese flag. According to the same report, the operation was carried out in coordination with the National Security Services, thanks to the exploitation of information that a quantity of cocaine has been smuggled by the vessel Harris, sailing from Malta, which was berthed at Quay 33 in the port of Algiers. Let's shift now to the Western Sahara file. The Sahrawi Prime Minister Bushra Hamou Bayoun said Wednesday at the Mohamed Bouguera University in Boumerdès that a dangerous international alliance of the Moroccan occupation threatened peace and security in the region. Said Mghazi has more in this report.
The Sahrawi official pointed out that in addition to its dangerous alliances that threaten peace and security in the region, the Moroccan occupier has involved the European Union in its indirect support for the war being waged against the Sahrawi people through treaties of an economic nature, referring to foreign investors and other economic forums lured by Morocco into opening branches in the occupied territories. In this respect, he considered that the decision by the Zionist entity to recognize Morocco's alleged sovereignty over Western Sahara is null and void and will only strengthen the determination of the Sahrawi people to continue their struggle for liberation. For the Sahrawi Prime Minister, the continuation of the Moroccan policy in the Sahel, notably its support for terrorism, organized crime and drug trafficking by threatening peace and security and by directly attacking neighboring countries, is simply a way for Morocco to escape from its many internal crises, which have been aggravated and exacerbated by the resumption of the armed struggle. The Security Council has not succeeded in imposing the implementation of its resolutions or those of the United Nations General Assembly relating to the question of Western Sahara, and its efforts to promote peaceful solutions in accordance with international law have not been successful, he deplored. This situation has paralyzed MINURSO, which has not been able to fulfill its mandate, namely the organization of the referendum and the protection of human rights in the occupied territories of Western Sahara, he said. On the other hand, in the Maghreb, the prime position occupied by the new Algeria in the concert of nations as a credible regional and continental power with its diplomatic, economic and military weight has earned its election to the Security Council as a non-permanent member for a 2-year term starting in January 2024, the Sahrawi Prime Minister pointed out. He also explained that the resumption of the armed struggle by the Sahrawi people came in response to the arrogance of the Moroccan occupier, who violated the ceasefire and intensified abuses in the occupied territories, not to mention the repeated violations of human rights and the use of terror to repress any form of civil expression rejecting the Moroccan occupation. The Summer University of the Polisario Front and the Sahrawi Republic will continue for 15 days at the Faculty of Political Science in Boudouou in Boumerdès here in Algeria.
Let's shift now to the burning Middle East file. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called on the international community to react without delay in the face of the unabated Zionist acts of aggression against the oppressed Palestinian people. Said Bougazi again.
President Mahmoud Abbas said on the sidelines of his meeting in Ramallah with the visiting Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulidis that the political process needs serious action from the international community in order to put an end to the behavior of the racist Zionist entity that considers itself above the law in order to establish security and peace for all in the region and in the world. President Mahmoud Abbas said that the policy of the Zionist entity has destroyed the foundations on which was constructed the political process. For his part, the Cypriot President Nikos Christodoulidis reiterated his position in favor of the two-state solution and the creation of an independent Palestinian state on the 1967 borders, with El-Quds as its capital, pledging to consolidate bilateral relations with Palestine. On Wednesday morning, the spokesman for the Palestinian presidency, Nabil Abu Rudaina, for his part, condemned the Zionist crimes in the occupied West Bank, also calling on the international community to provide international protection to the Palestinian people and to implement the resolutions of international legality. In a statement relayed by the Palestinian news agency Wafa, Abu Rudaina said that the occupation government is defying the international legality with its daily killings. The West Bank has been in a state of extreme tension since last year, consequence of the escalation practiced by the Zionist army in the Palestinian towns, camps, and villages.
And now, to wrap it up, on the occasion of the celebration of the ANP National Day, I invite you to listen to a broadcast compiled and read by our colleague Said Brazi and devoted to the importance of the National People's Army in the protection and edification of the country. This will be followed by a timely culture-oriented broadcast. I wish you swell listening.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, announced during a meeting held at the beginning of this year at the headquarters of the Ministry of National Defense his decision to establish the day of August 4th, National Day of the ANP. In a speech delivered on this occasion, he hailed the efforts of the peaceful Algerian army to defend Algeria with strength and ardor. This National Day is celebrated at the level of all the components of the ANP deployed throughout the national territory through the organization of demonstrations, activities and ceremonies of distinction in recognition of the lofty martyrs and the valiant mujahideen of the blessed war of liberation, the martyrs of national duty, the severely disabled in the fight against terrorism, as well as the elements of the ANP for their unfading devotion and their immeasurable sacrifices. In recent years, the ANP has continued its sustained efforts in the modernization and development of combat capabilities. It has achieved convincing results in the fight against terrorism and against organized crime, for the defense of the principles of the glorious revolution, the safeguard of the sovereignty and security of the country, the protection of borders and the safeguard of the integrity of the territory and the unity of the people, in addition to its contribution to the development of the national economy through a studied strategy aimed at achieving self-sufficiency, satisfying the needs of the national market and developing the industrial base of the country. The President of the Republic does not fail to hail on each occasion the pioneering and central role of the ANP, which pursues its mission of protection of the homeland out of loyalty to the oath of the glorious Shuhada or martyrs. During his last interview with the national press, the President of the Republic underlined that the strength of the Algerian army lies in the fact that it is an army nation which has been able to create strong links with its people, proud of their military institution. This feeling of pride was strongly expressed during the military parade organized by the ANP on the occasion of the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the recovery of national sovereignty. In a message addressed to the Chief of Staff of the ANP, Army General Saeed Shangriha, to congratulate him for the success of this military parade, President Tebboune affirmed that the military institution in our country is resolutely committed to the path of modern science and the acquisition of cutting-edge military technologies to get in tune with the latest developments and progress in the military field, thus consolidating its privileged place within the nation. For his part, Army General Saeed Shengriha maintained during a ceremony in honor of the executives and personnel of the ANP who participated in the military parade that the armament of the People's National Army is exclusively dedicated to the defense of Algeria and the protection of its borders and its national sovereignty, in addition to its contribution to the establishment of peace and stability in the world under the aegis of the United Nations. Algeria clearly expresses its will and its resolution to play a pivotal role on the regional and international scene within the framework of international law, he underlined. In a speech at the annual graduation ceremony at the Shershel Military Academy, Army General Saeed Shengriha affirmed that the National People's Army has always been the guarantor of national unity and has played an important role in national development, adding that the ANP will pursue its constitutional mission. This constitutional mission was enshrined in the Constitution of November 2020, which, in addition to consolidating the roles assigned to the ANP, provides through Articles 31 and 91 for the participation of the Army in peacekeeping missions under the aegis of the United Nations to deal proactively with any threat, particularly in the region, and to protect the country's strategic interests. This constitutional amendment reaffirms that Algeria's strategic choices are irreversible and that its doctrine in matters of foreign policy and national defense is constant and immutable. He also highlighted the need for the ANP and for the country to adapt to the new geopolitical deal, which dictates as an essential option participation in collective security for the defense of the geostrategic interests of Algeria. The ANP is distinguished from other armies in the world by the fact that it was not established by decree, one element among others which explains the profound scope of the national dimension and the popular extension of the worthy air of the National Liberation Army, emerged from the matrix of the sufferings of the people who, after having endured the worst hardships for many decades, decided to trigger one of the greatest revolutions of the 20th century.